We're in the Mausoleum of Ismail Samani, the founder of the Samanid dynasty more than 1,000 years ago in Bukhara. This dynasty ruled in Bukhara and its environs from the middle of the 9th century until the end of the 10th century. And this was a golden age for Bukhara. This was a special dynasty. If we look back in history, during the 5th and 6th centuries, this area was ruled by Persian rulers, by the Sassanid Empire. But then with the rise of Islam, the Arab conquerors spread Islam through the first caliphates, the Rashidun Caliphate for the first 4 caliphs, then the Umayyad Caliphate with its capital in Damascus, then the Abbasid Caliphate with its capital in Baghdad. And in the process, the early caliphs conquered Persia, conquered the Sassanid Empire, and this region came under Arab rule. The Samanid Empire, the Samanid dynasty, can be thought of as bringing back the native Persian language and Persian culture after this period of Arab rule. And this was therefore considered a popular and beloved dynasty by the locals. And it's one of the reasons why we can stand here today, because this mausoleum, in fact, is one of the very, very few surviving buildings of Bukhara that survived the conquest and destruction by Genghis Khan, the Mongol warriors who conquered Bukhara in the year 1220. And they destroyed almost everything. 2 structures that they did not destroy was the minaret, the great ancient minaret that out of respect, Genghis Khan said that remains standing. And this building, which became the oldest structure of Central Asia to survive, because the locals who so much beloved the Samanid period and Ismail Samani hid this place under the sand. So this building was buried. It was not noticed by the Mongols as they destroyed Bukhara, and it therefore survived for us to stand here today. Now, this was not only a period of popular Persian rule over a Persian-speaking region, a region that today, to a large extent, speaks Tajik, which is a language essentially the same as Farsi, the language spoken in modern-day Iran. But this was also a period of remarkable development of ideas and knowledge. It was a golden age here. And in fact, it was part of a broader Islamic golden age that lasted for many, many centuries. This golden age of Islam, which I think can be dated from the 9th to at least the 15th or 16th century, so hundreds and hundreds of years, is quite sadly not understood or appreciated in the Western world. But it was the golden age of Islam that brought the whole world so much knowledge, so much science, and it is what enabled, in fact, the Western world to even know its own ancient heritage. Because if it were not for the golden age of Islam, the great thinkers of ancient Greece and Rome probably would never have been known. It was the Arab scientists and philosophers who kept that knowledge alive and made a bequest to the entire world through their brilliance. In this place during the Samanid dynasty was one of the greatest thinkers in history, Ibn Sina, or known in the West as Avicenna, one of the glorious philosophers of Islam, one of the great scientific thinkers, and a person of tremendous brilliance who studied the ancient Greek texts, commented on Aristotle and Plato and other Greek thinkers, was himself a polymath of knowledge, was associated with the Samanid rulers, and was part of the golden age of Bukhara. But let's step back just a moment to understand this remarkable golden age of Islam in a even more complete way. When the Arab conquerors of the first caliphs conquered ancient Greece, conquered large parts of the Eastern Roman Empire, established their capitals first in Damascus and then in Baghdad, they actively courted and patronized the scientists and the thinkers and the scholars of the day. And they made very active translations of the Greek texts into Arabic for study. And it is that translation process that kept those texts alive to a very large extent. Because in Western Europe at the time, after the fall of the Roman Empire, these ancient texts were, to an important extent, abandoned. In fact, the Christian monks, who were among the only literate people in society and who were copying ancient manuscripts to keep them alive, regarded the writings of Plato and Aristotle and other Greek thinkers as pagan. So even keeping alive those ancient texts was risky, even heretical at some periods in Western Europe. So it was the Arab world, the Islamic world, the new world of Islam that was assiduously studying the ancient wisdom of Greece and of Rome, the classic texts, copying them into Arabic, which centuries later would be copied from Arabic into Latin and brought back to Europe. And one of the most remarkable periods and insights, thank God, that occurred in this was in Baghdad in the early years of the 9th century, when the Abbasid caliphs consciously aimed to make Baghdad the world center of learning. And they created what is called Beit al-Hikmah, the House of Knowledge. What a wonderful name. And the idea of Beit al-Hikmah was not just a building, not just a single activity, but a flowering of knowledge and wisdom, active translations, and active philosophy and science. All the wisdom that could be gathered in this house of wisdom was pulled together. And some of the earliest great thinkers of this time, Al-Kindi, worked in Baghdad, a genius who is sometimes called the founder of Islamic philosophy, who said faith and reason must go together, who studied ancient texts, who studied the ancient Greek philosophers, and who helped to establish the Beit al-Hikmah. He was, Al-Kindi was followed by Al-Farabi, another genius of philosophy in the Arab world, and one who certainly affected all of our classes as young people for the next 1,000 years, Al-Khwarizmi, who affected our classwork for the next 1,000 years, Al-Khwarizmi. Now, Al-Khwarizmi, you know because he wrote the first textbook of algebra. So if you liked algebra, thank him. If you suffered through algebra, well, he established the principles, because his textbook, written already in the 9th century, was the textbook used in European universities for centuries afterwards. And his mathematical wisdom, genius, gave core ideas to mathematics that made mathematics the field of knowledge that it is. He was the head librarian, in fact, of the Beit al-Hikmah, so he played a decisive role in the institution of bringing together this knowledge as well. Al-Kindi, Al-Khwarizmi, Al-Farabi, and then Avicenna here. Avicenna in Central Asia, Avicenna as part of the Samanid Empire. And Avicenna had a student whom we all know, but we only know, especially in the Western world, just the tip of the genius of Avicenna's student. I'm speaking of Umar Khayyam. Umar Khayyam, one of the greatest polymaths in history. We know him from the Rubaiyat. In fact, if I were asked who was Umar Khayyam, I would say a great Persian poet. But Umar Khayyam was an incredible scientist. He absolutely made fundamental breakthroughs in algebra, in geometry, in actually the foundations of what would become non-Euclidean geometry nearly a millennium later, in solving cubic equations, and the list goes on and on. And also these breakthroughs came in scientific areas. They came in medicine. In other words, a polymath who was a genius across fields of knowledge. And the Samanid Empire was this flourishing of this knowledge. Remember, it brought together the greatest learning of Persia, the learning that the Arabs had pulled into the Beit al-Hikmah, the great learning from India with the Hindu numerals, the ones we use, the idea of the zero, the decimal system. These phenomenal breakthroughs were made possible because of Bukhara, because of these geniuses, because of this patronage by the rulers for knowledge. And this golden age, while it depended on the fortune of genius in different places, continued for centuries more. And the exchange of ideas within the Muslim world, the idea that Arabic texts translated from ancient Greek were spread throughout the Islamic world and could be read throughout the Islamic world, meant that there was a vast area of civilization studying, making advances in astronomy, in medicine, in mathematics, in philosophy, in political thought, that would then spread throughout this vast Islamic world. And of course, sometimes in Persian, sometimes in Arabic, across all of the different parts of the Islamic world. And two of the great geniuses that emerged from Avicenna's teachings were actually in the far west of the Islamic world, in the caliphates of Cordoba, all the way in present-day Spain.